Welcome to episode 2 of the Resin 101 series. If you haven't checked out episode 1 where we talk about the safety and resin PPE, be sure to check that out before you watch this video. This video, we are going to talk about all the different types of resin and the uses that they have. Hey everyone, it's Sam from the Auntie team, and you're watching The Sam Show. Let's go make some fun things. As you can see from my small resin collection, there's a lot of different types out there, and it can be kind of confusing to newbies on which one is best for you and what project you should use which resin for. From this collection, all except these two are from Counterculture DIY. Counterculture DIY is where I get my epoxy resin and my UV resin from. But this is just what works best for me. You might find a different brand works better for you based on your climate or just the type of projects you're doing. These other two are ones that I am learning now as they are water-based. There's Crystalac from the Crystalac company and JESMONITE from Mrs. Colorberry, which are both water-based resins and are way different to use, but are great alternatives than epoxy resin. Let's get into detail of each type a little bit more thoroughly. First, let's talk about artist resin from Counterculture DIY. This is a great resin for tumblers and for top coating like wood surfaces. This was my go-to until Counterculture came out with the medium viscosity. This is just a thicker type resin that's great for doing tumblers. As you can see, it's yellowing a bit. That's because I've had this one for quite a while now because I'm not making tumblers as much as I used to. Artist resin is a 1-to-1 mix by volume, so you can see me measuring it out and making sure I get at eye level for an accurate reading. Artist resin is really great for using on tumblers, especially if you have a really bumpy layer of glitter. Because it's thicker, you can cover it up a lot faster than using a medium viscosity, and doing a tabletop or a finish on wood, it's absolutely awesome. As you can see, it's an amazing shine. It's an awesome resin to have and to use. Second is my most used resin, which is the artist resin in medium viscosity. The only difference between this resin and the artist resin is this is a much thinner viscosity. It works a lot better in molds, which I love to use it for, but you can also use it on tumblers and top coating as well. It's just a little bit runnier to work with. It's not the easiest for beginners if you're using it on, say, keychains or something where you're trying to keep it on the surface area, but once you start getting more into resin, this is my go-to. Medium viscosity is absolutely amazing at getting in all those nooks and crannies in those thin molds. I love it compared to artist resin because artist resin was a little thick and would get bubbles. They also have a thin viscosity, but I find that the glitter tends to sink a little bit too much in that, and I love my glitter, so medium is the best of both worlds in my opinion. It just has a shine and durability that can't be beat. It's my favorite, number one. This is the Fast Set epoxy resin. I have a love-hate relationship with this one. It is awesome for doing base coat layers on tumblers if you're in a hurry, but you can't use them on white or lighter colored bases because it will turn yellow a lot quicker than the other resins will. It also gives you a very limited working time. If you need to get a tumbler done and you need a couple of coats put on it in a day, this is great for using it for that. You cannot use it in molds. It's a great way to ruin your mold. It also cannot be used as the final coat on a tumbler. You want to use either the medium viscosity or the artist resin for a final coat on a tumbler, but it does get you all those base layers a lot quicker than using one of the alternatives. The next is casting resin. Casting resin is a lot different compared to the artist resins. The artist resins are really for a good top coat or really thin molds. The casting resin is for any mold that is 1.5 inches to 2 inches or deeper. You still have to do layers if you want to go deeper at a time, but this is great for doing those molds for preserving flowers or those river tables. However, when this fully cures, it will never be hard. So sometimes you'll go in with one of the harder resins for a top coat because this will always stay kind of soft. So the culture cast that I am using is a 1-to-1. It is very thin, almost like water. That's why you're able to pour deeper molds with very little bubbles. Counterculture does have a hard cast casting resin, but it's not a 1-to-1. I have never personally used it because I just love the 1-to-1. I use it all the time for preserving flowers, so this is the one I'm going to stick with for now. The last of my counterculture DIY collection is the UV resins. UV resin is probably one of the most popular on the markets right now, and I absolutely love it. There were a lot of different brands I tried before this one that I didn't really like, and this one I love because it actually cures fully hard, and they came out with a black formula, so if you wanted to use additives to color your resin, sometimes you have a hard time with UV resin with adding colorants, but with the black and the white colors, it's a lot easier. UV resin is awesome for small projects like keychains or the small clear molds. It cures with a UV lamp, which is different than the rest of these. These all cure by mixing the two parts together and waiting a certain amount of time. This cures as soon as you put it in direct sunlight or you put it under a UV lamp. UV resin has come a long way since when I first started resining. The UV resins that I got on Amazon never really fully cured, and they would bend over time. They weren't very durable. When Counterculture came out with theirs, I was still leery of it, but I am obsessed, and I use it on all of my acrylic keychains, badge reels, all of my small projects because it's so easy, so fast, and so fun to use. If you're a beginner and looking to get into resin, I highly recommend UV resin. It's the most affordable to get into as a beginner, and it's so much fun. There are so many possibilities with it. Next is Bright Tone from the Crystal Company. This is a product that I am newer to. I have a love-hate relationship with it so far because it's so different than the two-part epoxies. It's a water-based resin, so it is said that it is safer than the two-part epoxies because it is just a water-based resin. However, still use precaution when you're using it. It still is a chemical that is reacting to the air when you put it on something. This is used a lot in the tumbler community, and also I've been playing around with it for just top coats and base coats for a couple different wood projects I do. This one you do not mix. It starts curing as soon as it reacts with the air, and it is very, very thin compared to these other ones. Bright Tone is a low VOC water-based resin, so I still use gloves, even though a lot of people don't. Use at your own discretion. But as you can see, look how easy it is. I go straight from the bottle onto a tumbler and I just rub it on. It's so simple. I think a disadvantage is that it's so thin, you have to do so many layers, but because it's so fast, it kind of equals itself out compared to epoxy resin. So I am learning to love it. Like I said earlier, I don't make a lot of tumblers anymore, but it makes me want to make more. And then the last and one of the newest that I've brought into my toolbox is JESMONITE. JESMONITE is a gypsum water resin based product where you mix a powder with a liquid and you can pour it in molds. Crystallat cannot be used in molds, and that's kind of the one downfall, especially for me, to these newer water-based resins. JESMONITE makes up for that. However, instead of being clear like the epoxy resins, it's a like off-white cream color. So these are alternatives that are on the market right now that are safer but still use precaution. A huge difference with JESMONITE is that you have to weigh the parts, and one part is a powder and one part is a liquid. It also is a 1 to a 2.5 measurement. So they give you a nice little cheat sheet on how to measure out your different quantities, which is really nice. So even though I added some color to this, you can see there is zero transparency to it like epoxy resin, but JESMONITE is extremely soft and smooth. It's made from a gypsum water-based resin, and I think it's a really cool alternative for people who still want to make molds but don't necessarily want to use epoxy resin anymore. Oh yeah, and you can demold it in 20 minutes. It's pretty awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for sticking with me. I know that was a lot. I really hope it helps you determine which resin is best for you if you're wanting to try, or maybe you've never heard of some of these and now you want to try something new. So see you next time. I can't wait for episode 3.